This episode of the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast is brought to you by Loctite's Tight Foam. The best builders take weatherization seriously. When they need to seal a gap that's too small for insulation but big enough to create a draft, they reach for Loctite's Tight Foam. With 3 formulations for everything from small cracks to the biggest gaps, there's a tight foam product for every job, including a low expanding product designed to seal the rough opening around windows and doors. The high-density foam forms a tenacious bond to most common building materials, stays flexible to prevent cracking when materials move, and keeps air, moisture, and pests out of the house. Builders who care about energy efficiency, comfort, and durability choose Tight Foam. Visit LoctiteProducts.com for more information.
That you are valuable, right? I think, and that comes into, you need to protect yourself with a contract. You need to collect your money when you're owed, right? And don't be afraid to have open and honest communication with your customers, right? I think some guys shy away from that because sometimes it's a tough conversation.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. Today I'm joined by attorney Karalynn Cromeens, who specializes in work for construction firms. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Karalynn, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you so much for having me back again. I appreciate it.
This is the second time you've been on the show, which is a distinction only a few guests can claim. And for whatever reason, you've agreed to be the unofficial legal counsel of the record for the Fine Homebuilding podcast, which I greatly appreciate.
Absolutely, anytime.
I don't think that means anything, but that's okay. Can you please remind us about your law practice? You have a somewhat unique specialty, right?
Yeah, construction law, and construction law from the perspective of someone who grew up in the industry. And then in my last year of law school, I actually became a member of the industry when I started my own material supply company with my husband. And so coming at the legal side of it from a perspective of understanding what it takes to keep the doors open of the family business and that, like what I like to call the get shit done tribe, who are actually out there working, building things, getting things done. And so I built my practice to support my clientele that was very similar to myself in the industry.
You mentioned that your family was in the construction business, and I'm sure that influenced your decision for a specialty. Were there other things? Did you see a need in the industry for helping these folks?
Absolutely. So actually, I went to law school and I didn't have the plan of going into construction law, but I ended up there out of necessity to collect our money as a material supplier. And then because of my background, I got really good at it. And I don't think there's very few people that are construction litigators and construction attorneys that have the background from being in the industry that can really explain the legal side of things in plain English. So, you can make decisions to better run your business.
Can you please remind us some of the things you commonly help your clients with?
Sure, absolutely. One of the biggest thing is contract drafting, right? And having a custom contract for your business based on the state you're in, based on the type of work you do. And then, every business has its own things that they need to be aware of. Like, do they want to put a sign in the front yard? Do they want to be able to use pictures? They don't want to be responsible for getting the dog let out. So, having something in writing is better than nothing, but having a custom contract for your company to have your client sign in plain English is probably the number one thing you can do to not have a dispute and end up in court later on.
I bet you wish you could have that conversation with your clients ahead of when they call you oftentimes. Am I right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I always get the phone call if I got this email from the client, from their customer about, we're upset about XYZ. What do I do? And it's like, okay, the first thing is, well, what does your contract say? Do you have that? And then it's like, okay, well, you don't have any out this way. So let's make an offer. Let's be reasonable, try to settle it. And let's learn the lesson of, okay, now let's go back and add in what we need to add in so this doesn't happen again. And in a situation like that, yes, you may have lost time, but you gain so much knowledge from the lost time and the lost money that you can do it better going forward. And that's what's important. So it's really not lost if you learn something from it.
I think it protects your clients too, right? That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've recently partnered with JobTread, a construction management platform for contractors. Can you briefly explain to listeners what the software is, and can you talk about the various sizes of businesses it can accommodate?
So I think it's for all size businesses because what it is it's a job software. So you can do job costing, you can contact your customers, you can do your proposals, you can do, you can contact your subs and do your subcontracts in there. So it has everything, and the job costing and all of that will export to QuickBooks, so you can have all your financial docs. And so it really is the all-in-one for the small guy that's a handyman that's in and out in the same day to the home builder that wants to manage his project. It has all of those things in there. And the one thing I can tell you about JobTread is they think, like I do, that customer service is above all most important. And so they
Mm.
have a customer service team just like I do. That can answer all your questions and show everything that's going on. And so the great integration of this is like, so even before we made this integration, I've had JobTread customers and I'll do their contract, but they were having their clients sign the paper contract and then having to keep track of that. And so what we've done is that you can hire us through the software. We'll still do the customize. We meet with you. We talk about your business. We find out what's important for you. In 5 business days, you have a draft of the contract. You get to review it. After you do that, we give it back to JobTread and they just put it right in to your software, to your proposal. And so once your clients agree to that, they're already agreeing to the terms. And so it makes it a seamless process, because the main thing is like nobody wants to go hire an attorney. It's too expensive, takes too much time, and I don't know who to hire anyways. And so like all those things are answered right there in the platform. It makes it super, super easy and streamlined. And it really CYA like covers your ass from future issues, because some of the stuff comes with boilerplate stuff that really isn't going to protect your business.
Hmm. So, what kind of stuff can you do through this software? It would seem like sometimes you need an attorney in a courtroom, but I'm sure a lot of stuffs don't need that.
No, exactly. And so you could, once you make the contact with me, I'm here to help. But in the software itself, you can purchase the documents. So we have a residential repair remodel contract, which is like for remodel contractors or jobs that take longer than a week. We have terms and conditions, which are the guys that are in and out in a day or two. And then we also have this master subcontract agreement right in the platform. And we have plans on expanding once we see how this works. But if you need litigation or need help responding to a demand letter, you've now made that connection, because we work in all 50 states. We're here to help you. And my main thing is to try to get in right when the dispute happens so we can try to settle it before a lawsuit's ever filed.
Hmm. So, are the documents customizable? I mean, I think you'd agree, like a contract document is not a one size fits all thing.
Absolutely. So, a pool contractor is going to need a different contract than a landscape contractor. That's going to need a different one than a painter. So, yes, they're absolutely they're meant for your business. So, like the painting contractors, we always put in a standard that they're judged against. For like the painting contractors, we reference the PCA standards.
Hmm.
So that way, if a client comes back and says, "Hey, they're standing like 2 feet, like a foot away from the wall, trying to measure their work," we're like, no. Here's the contract we agreed. You have to stand back here to look at the wall and the whole wall. And so, yes, it's very much based on what you do and what's important to you. And then, too, in the future, after we draft your contract, if there's a situation arises that you didn't know of, send us an email, tell us, or give us a call, and we can add some language and add it right into the contract so that we are covered. Because that's the thing, too, is as you go on in business, there will be things you want to add or things you want to take out. And so we're here to edit it and do all that.
You can't even guess the things you may need to put in your contract, I'm sure, sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm guessing, well, you touched on it a little bit, but there are different degrees of legal counsel your clients would need.
Mm-hmm.
Contracts are one thing, but sometimes you need legal services. You mentioned that you're licensed to do practice law in all 50 states. How's that work? You can't be in Houston and get to a courtroom here in Hartford, for example, right?
No, exactly. So I have like boots on the ground that work through my firm that I hire directly. So like, and then we work on the strategy together. So like the strategy would come from me, but the actual application of going to court or attending court hearings would be an attorney that's in that state. So I'm personally working on being licensed in all the states to kind of get my foot in the door, but then I have boots on the ground of actual people that are there. Just a big network of specific construction attorneys that are specific to the industry that I already know what they're talking about, because I've talked to them and interviewed them, and they're ready to go.
And I'm guessing most times you don't want it to get to that point. You want to be able to handle it in email or signing papers then instead of a courtroom.
Absolutely. And then too, so a lot of that is like, so the client comes in with an issue. We evaluate the risk. What is the risk of not settling? What is the risk of settling? paying a little more than you want to, even though, because a lot of times too, it's like that pride, you did a good job. You
Right.
went over and above, and there's
And you
still
want a way to prove that, right? You want a way to prove that you did the right thing and you're,
exactly.
yeah.
And settling and giving them more than you think they deserve doesn't feel right, but the alternative will feel worse, I promise. So even if you give a little more now, because here's the thing is that you go to court, the best thing you can hope for to break even, and that doesn't even account for your time and your stress of dealing. That's just your attorney's fees and your actual costs. Your time is better spent developing your business, spending the money to develop the business to prevent whatever happened in that situation from happening again.
Wow. That's worth the price of admission to this show already, right?
Absolutely.
So what can a contractor, one of your clients, do to make your job easier?
Come see me on the front end before an
Yeah.
issue. Like, it's preventative. So I would compare it like, think of me as the dentist. Like nobody wants to go to the dentist, but you really need to go to the dentist because otherwise you'll get cavities. So come get your contract so you don't get sued, right? Let's talk about a collection strategy before it's an issue so that we don't have to worry about it when it becomes an issue. It's very much preventative. And I don't think that's what lawyers for years have been thought of. Lawyers have been thinking after the mess has already occurred, right? And so much of my job is let's prevent the mess from happening as much as we can, right? There's still going to be unreasonable people out there no matter what we do, but as much as we can and be clear about what's expected so that way at the end of the day we won't end up in a courtroom. We can end up in a place where we're just out there doing our job, which is what contractors want to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think everyone wants projects to be a success, right? Clients, contractors, subcontractors, but it doesn't always happen.
Absolutely.
So what do you wish, I asked this folks of a lot of my guests, what do you wish contractors better understood about your job?
That I'm there to help them, and that more than just writing contracts too, like I'm a risk manager, right? If you have an issue and you want to know the risk, or if you have an idea for your business, you want to change something up, what are the risks? What are the options legally? I'm here for that, right? And asking those questions before you just go ahead and jump and do it is a smart thing, right? Employees versus subcontractor, all of those things, I can give you the legal perspective and let you make the decision. Like if you're a residential contractor thinking about getting into commercial work, let's talk about what that looks like, what the differences are, just from the legal perspective. And, before you jump, that way you have a little bit of a safety net to know what you're walking into.
How do you know if the attorney you have is a good one?
First and foremost, they will speak your language. They know the construction terms like change orders or schedule or material escalation prices. Like those should be things that they're familiar with. And then they know the legal stuff on top of it. I mean, mostly if you're an attorney, they should know the legal stuff. It's just a good construction attorney is also going to know the industry, which is why they're so rare, right? Just like a good divorce attorney doesn't do anything else but divorces. A good, probate attorney doesn't do wills. We specialize just like doctors do, and so it's really important to find one that speaks the language of the construction industry because it's so specific.
I'm guessing it takes years to get good at a specialty in the legal field. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even though I was familiar with construction, it took me, 10 years before I really got down to these are how the contract works. This is how the collection works. And just, the flows and the ins and out of the industry.
When people ask me how long it took to get good at my job, I tell them I'm still working on it.
Next thing, I'm still working on it too. I got the bases covered, but everybody's always working on getting better. I think that's an important part of our jobs too.
So you mentioned how you have your legal specialty. Most folks are familiar with prosecutors and defense attorneys and litigators, I'm guessing because of television. But there are a lot of different ways to be an attorney, right?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about some of the weird ways we might not know to be a lawyer?
Absolutely. So it's the funny story is like, I didn't even realize that, when I did my undergrad, I was a criminal justice major. I didn't even realize civil court existed until I started law school. It's like, wow, I didn't know either, right? So you got litigators, you got people that are just transactional. You have, there's teachers, there's the main thing about being a lawyer and having a lawyer mindset is a problem solver. So in any industry, there could be a lawyer, whether that's the medical field, a lot they have in-house lawyers, oil and gas. It's all about problem solving, knowing the facts that you have, kind of where the law is, and solving the issue. So I'd say probably most attorneys aren't actually litigators, and most attorneys don't like litigation because it's very stressful. It's stressful. You got to remember all the facts of the case of your head. You got to be ready to object and all of these things all at once. It's a lot.
And it's performance, right? You
Absolutely.
are acting to on behalf of your client.
Absolutely. And don't be wrong, I've been accused of being overly passionate about that because I take it personal, right? And I think when you're explaining things to a jury, I think to be successful, you have to. And sometimes that can be a little overwhelming to a jury when you have somebody like as passionate, like talking about concrete, like, oh my God, can you believe this happened? And they have no idea.
They can't understand, right? They don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you ever consider other ways to be an attorney besides your specialization in construction law?
I was always interested in real estate, and so I took real estate classes in law school. And actually, before I started my firm, went to work for my real estate professor until my construction stuff for our family just took over, and I had to start my own thing. But I think real estate and construction go very much together.
I was going to ask you, how is it different from what you do in the real estate world?
Yeah, I think it's very similar because construction starts with the raw land, which
Yeah.
knowing how land and property transfers and the liens and all of that, I always found fascinating. So I think it works really well with the construction law because I think it's the basis of where you start when you start a construction project and then where you end up if you don't get paid.
It's sad that that always ends the sentence, right? And then you don't get paid.
Absolutely.
So you were also a published author. Do you want to talk about your book, if you wouldn't mind?
So I wrote a book called Quit Getting Screwed. And I actually wrote it because I was really mad. So I'd gone to a trial for a commercial subcontractor and he lost and big time lost, like $400,000 lost. And it was not because he did a bad job. It was because he didn't understand the contract that he signed. He did not understand what a pay when paid clause meant. He didn't understand that even if he did, he didn't understand the ramifications of what that could mean. And nobody is out there saying, hey, these dangerous subcontracts exist and here's the risk in plain English and they're huge. So maybe we should talk about this before you sign the contract. And so that was my real passion project, of getting the language out there to let people know. Because here's what happened, and this is on the commercial side, is that for years contractors just wanted to go to work, and so they would just sign the contract that was put in front of them. And attorneys draft things thinking that there's going to be a negotiation. And so they're very one-sided. And when that negotiation never happened, those contracts just stayed one-sided. And so it's like if you give a commercial subcontract to a regular contract attorney, they would rather burn it than try to save it because it's
Mm-hmm.
and these guys are signing these things all day long and not even realizing what they're signing.
If you have, do you have a chance in court against a document like that? Can you win? No.
Not really. Not really. Because here's the thing is like, so when you're on the residential side, there are consumer protections, like especially in Connecticut, there's a whole consumer board that protects the homeowner. There's nothing like that in commercial. In commercial, it's like buyer, it's all free for all because you're considered two businesses. They think, most states are an individual needs certain protections because they're not business savvy. Once you're in the business world, what you sign will be held against you, even if it's the most unconscionable thing you've ever read in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
Do you still see those kinds of contract documents come across your desk? Yes.
All day long. All day long.
Really?
So a big part of what I do, we do contract review on the commercial side for a flat fee. And they haven't changed. We're trying to make pushback as much as we can, but that starts with people being informed about what's in these things, right?
And do they typically change them if you say these provisions are unfair? Will they change it?
Some they will and some they won't. But we can, and here's the thing, it's never just cross it out and say, I'm not going to sign. It's like, here's some middle ground, right? It's always a negotiation. And right now, more than ever, I think the trades have a real chance to gain ground on permanently changing some of these provisions, like the pay when paid clause, because they're more in demand and they have more say. And so when we're in a situation like that, we have more power to negotiate. So I think if people will become informed and say, hey, I can't take this risk. It's not worth my family. It's not worth my business. I can't do it. The more likely we are to have change. I know Virginia just passed a law to make a pay when paid clause illegal. So I think.
Can you talk? You've mentioned that a couple of times, and I have not done my job as a journalist asking you, what does that mean?
So like on a commercial subcontract, what a pay one pay clause means is that I, the subcontractor who is doing the work, can do a perfect job, do everything on time, but I'm still not entitled to be paid until the owner pays the general contractor. And there could be tons of reasons why the owner's not paying the general that has nothing to do with me. So basically, if you sign a commercial subcontract, you should be able to, or be prepared to, potentially cash flow your entire scope of work without getting paid, because the owner has not paid the general, and not that you've done anything
And
wrong.
you're talking about a long time. It could take years, right? Oh my goodness.
What happened to my client where I wrote the book, it was 120 days, right? He had put so much money to get the project started, and they were 120 days late. He had extended his credit lines. Nobody else would come out to work. And then, so what happened is he had to abandon the contract. And once you do that, once you abandon and terminate the contract, it's not, you just don't get paid. They can come after you for the difference of what it costs them to finish the job and the price that you promised. So it can become a huge mess.
Who could absorb those costs?
Exactly. Which is like, it's like, hey guys, you realize this is what you're signing, and do realize I know I see very few projects. Most of them go out without a hitch, but I'm just saying, hey, this is a risk. Hey, you should try to negotiate, some fairer terms and not getting paid at all.
What do you wish that folks knew about protecting themselves from the get-go? Is it having a contract that works?
Having a contract, that they have rights, that it's not that you deserve to be paid for the work that you do. I think that, and you're probably not charging enough, just generally speaking, contractors don't ever charge enough.
Yeah.
That you are valuable, right? I think, and that comes into, you need to protect yourself with a contract. You need to collect your money when you're owed, right? And don't be afraid to have open and honest communication with your customers, right? I think some guys shy away from that because sometimes it's a tough conversation. Absolutely it is, but it'll be way tougher if you don't have it. I promise you.
You mentioned earlier that some people are just unreasonable and you're not going to make them happy. Is there a way to spot those people in your experience earlier than you end up doing?
Yeah, most of the time when guys come into me with those kind of clients, there was some red flag in the beginning that they knew in their gut they shouldn't have taken the job.
I hear that so often. Seriously,
Exactly.
and trust your intuition, right?
Absolutely. And if you would do that and just say, hey, this is just not going to work out, right? Because in any business, like I talked to a potential client today, and I could tell that we weren't driving. I'm like, this is not really a file I want to take. I could tell already we're not getting along, and I'll give you some other attorneys, but this is not something I'm interested in, because I knew it, I could feel it, and just really listening to that on the front end is so important. Because like I said, all the guys that end up in my office be like, I knew I should have taken it. There were signs, like they called me 20 times, or they wanted to change my contract, or there's something usually that tips them off, that if you would go back and be like, that right there, I should have known.
Well, folks, that once again is worth a price of admission of the podcast, I would say. It's been a pleasure talking to you as before. How about your firm's website so people can reach you?
Sure. It's the CromeensLawFirm.com, which is CROMEENS, and our phone number is 713-715-7334.
Is there a way to? Is there a contact box on the website, folks?
There's a contact box, and you can go ahead and you can schedule to talk to me directly. I'm also on Facebook, which is another way to get rid of me. If you have direct questions, I do direct messengers, and then I'll send you the Calendly link, and you can book from there. Just Karalynn Cromeens, that's me. So I'm around trying to help people on all the platforms.
Is there anything you want to ask or tell our listeners before we go?
No, I'm here to help, and I think most attorneys are really here to help, and we're not trying to cost you extra money. So.
And you offered very generously in a previous email to answer questions if podcast listeners had something that was widely applicable, and I think that's hugely awesome.
Yeah. If you want to talk about a specific topic, they'll email you. We could set up another thing. We could dive into even a specific state, or whatever you find important. We can go from there.
That's very generous. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Karalynn Cromeens for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Don't be scared of your attorney, right?
Absolutely. Figure it out.